Hi everyone. So this is just a little video to show you how to make the Cathedral Windows block for the Cathedral Flowers project box. So I'm going to show you right from the beginning how to make one whole block, and then you'll know how, and then it'll be really easy. So it looks much more complicated than it actually is. First thing I'm going to do is these are the frame pieces. There's 4 pieces for each block. So I'm just making one block today. So I'm going to take each of the frame pieces and I'm going to fold them in half diagonally. And I'm going to go ahead and press those. They don't have to be super, super flat. They just need to be pressed so that they keep their shape folded on the diagonal that way. Okay. And then I'm going to lay out my, these are low volume, so I have to turn them over sometimes to see if they're right side up or upside down. So I'm going to lay out all of my blocks. So normally, if you're making your whole quilt, you're going to lay out all 36 of your low volume backgrounds, your 3.5-inch squares. But since I'm just making one block, I'm just going to lay out these 4. So normally you'd lay out the whole, all 36, and then for each 4 patch, you would put the raw edges of your triangles go toward the middle of your squares. So just like a little piece of pie. So all of your raw edges are here in the middle. And then when you sew them, when you sew these blocks together, all of your raw edges will be cut in. So that's the first thing we're going to do. We're going to sew, just sew this like a 4 patch, but you're going to have extra layers because you're going to have your little triangles there in the middle. So let's go ahead and sew those over at the sewing machine. Switch my camera over. There we go. Looks like I need to move the camera back a little bit, so I'll do that in just a second. There, hopefully you can see a little bit better there. So now I'm just going to take these 2 rows of squares and make sure that all of my edges are lined up. And I'm going to pin them, of course, because you know me, I'm a big pinner. I pin everything. So it just takes a little second to get them all together so that they're nice and straight. Okay, there's the top. And then let me just do the bottom one. Guess I could have done this at the cutting table, huh? So I just make sure that once I've got them pinned that they're going the right direction, because you can get off and end up having them going the opposite direction than you meant to be. So there are quite a few layers here. You've got, let's see, 4 for the frames and then the 2 for the background. So there's 6 layers. So what I do is I sew a really scant 1/4-inch seam because Otherwise, the seam takes up a lot of the fabric and you end up with your blocks being a little bit small. So I'm going to do a scant quarter on these. So it's just going to be a little bit less than the 1/4 inch. And on these, because there is so many layers, I do backstitch. I just do 2 back stitches just to keep it from pulling apart on the ends. Okay. So those are done. And because there are so many layers, I have tried a couple of times doing pressing them open, thinking that that would make it better, but actually pressing them to the side works best. So I go ahead and press my one seam to the right and one seam to the left on these. And that way you can nest your seams. So let me give it a quick press. I'm not going to switch the camera over because it's only going to take me just a second. I'll be right back. Okay, so they're pressed. Trying not to trip myself with my microphone cord here. So now I'm just going to nest my seams just like you do any other 4-patch. And go ahead and put a pin there in the center. And then again, just make sure that all of your raw edges are together. And in this case, it's a little bit trickier. So I also line up my folds because sometimes the raw edges will have come apart just a little bit. This is the boring part, and I'm sure you know how to put these together. If you've ever done any kind of quilt, you can put a 4-patch together, I'm sure. And that's basically all this is a 4-patch with a couple of extra pieces. Okay, let's go ahead and sew this part. Okay, and when you're done, you should have this. Basically a square and a square, but you're going to have little open ends on your folds where your folds are. Okay. I'm going to switch back over to the other camera. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and in the center seam, I am going to press this open because there are so many layers that it will get a little bit flatter if we do that. And it takes a second to find the center since there are so many layers. Okay, so what we have is this, and this is our frame, our center frame. You're going to take a little piece of your batting, a 3.5-inch square of your batting, and you'll line it right up with the seam lines, line the corners up with your seam lines of your frame. And same thing with your centerpiece, your little window fabric. This again is a 3.5-inch square. So these are going to be really hard to see on the camera, but these are very tiny applique pins. And I have included some of those in your box. So what you're going to do is take your frame fabric, which is open on the edges, and you're going to flip it over right in the middle and pin it right there in the center on all 4 sides. These little tiny applique pins are awesome because they won't get in your way when you go to sew. You won't have to be moving them around. So they're so tiny, they're really hard to see on my pin cushion, so I have to look for them. Nope, that's not one. There it is. I have a bunch of them, but I only took a couple of them out. So I'm just pinning the very center, and you're going to pull that over. It's going to be about 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch on there. There's another one. They're glass head pins. These are these applique pins. They're from Japan. A company called Little House makes them, and they're my favorite pins. They make some longer pins too, but these applique ones are awesome for doing applique or anything where you don't want your pin to get in your way because they are so short that your thread doesn't get stuck around them. There's the other one. Okay, and if you like to pin and I did include these pins in your box, you could pin your ends here as well. And I did that on a couple of mine, and on a couple of them I just left them unpinned. So do whichever way you like best. It looks like I don't have any more of those little pins in here. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this without more pins. So just putting one pin in the center, like I showed on the pattern, works just fine. If you have a stiletto, you can use a stiletto at your machine for this next part. If you don't have one, you don't really need one. You can use a pair of tweezers or just something that helps you to hold on to the fabric. So we're going to go back to the sewing machine and we are going to top stitch these down. Now, if you like to do hand sewing, this is a great time to hand sew as well. You could just hand applique these if you want to, but I like to, or at least this time, I wanted to show you how to do it on the machine to make it faster and easier for you. Of course, if you hand sew, it would be really easy because you would not have to worry about it going too fast and you would be all ready to go. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just start on one side. I'm going to flip this over so that it makes a nice curve towards the center. And then I am going to top stitch very close to the edge of the fold. So just starting out, and I'm going to take one back stitch just so that it doesn't come undone. And it doesn't make a mess if you only do one. And I'm just using plain white thread. Now, it does show, but because this frame fabric has so much white in it, I don't think that it's distracting, and I really don't think that it shows very much at all. When you get about 1/2 foot away, you can't even see it at all. So I went ahead and used white on mine. And I'm just going really slow, and I'm going really close to the edge of the fold. So I don't want to sew over that pin, so I'm just getting really close to the pin, and then I'm taking the pin out. And then I just continue around that curve. Okay, and then when I get to the end, I leave my needle down, pull up my presser foot, and then I start on the other side. Now, what you want to make sure that you do is pull the fabric over so that the curve covers the raw edge of your fabric and your batting, and then put your presser foot back down. And what I'm going to do is lift my needle and then put my needle back in over the top of that fold, and then continue to go very slowly around that fold onto the next part. Once you get it to this point, you can go a little bit faster to get closer to the center, because the curve is kind of automatic. It kind of holds its shape, so you don't have to be super, super careful. And then I just hold it at the end with my fingernail or a pair of tweezers or my stiletto. And I just do the same thing, go right to the end, leave my needle down, and then turn. Pull in that curve. Continue around the next side. So as you can see, this is really simple. And as long as you keep an eye on where you're going and hold that edge over the top of your fabric and your batting, you'll be good. Go right to the end, lift it up. Sometimes I want to push it under just a little bit. If I see it starting to flip on me there. And then here at the very, very end, I just make sure that it's definitely covering everything. And then when I get to the very end, I will do another couple of back stitches just to make sure it stays secured. And that's it. Your whole block is finished and it looks pretty and it's all done. And I will also put so I think this is probably the only thing that people might be a little confused about in the pattern, because the rest of it is just basic piecing, putting your blocks together. And I will put a link to my applique video where I show how to do a fusible bias for your stems on your flowers, and how to use the applique paper that I've included in your box. Okay, thanks so much. I hope you enjoy making this project. It's one of my favorite things that I've ever made. So I hope you enjoy it as much as I did.